Hey there everyone, as promised the next video I'm making, the one I'm making now, is about my Duels guide. I took the time to finish it. It took quite a long time writing it through. I did it properly, and this video is going to be me talking through it all for anyone who prefers it in video format, but I would recommend you go and you search for this on the forum and you give it a proper read. I've done this first page but not the other pages. This is pretty much a revamp of this guide because it was originally just an index where I listed all the different Duels there, and I talked about the evolution materials because back then that was the big deal and dual experience wasn't a problem, but now actually I've got a more rounded view of it all. They've balanced it a bit more, so both are requirements that you can be limited on, and yes, so it's a lot more interesting. The main section which I've added is this efficiency tips on the first page, which is what I'm going to go through in this video. Before I go any further, I just want to mention as well, I've got a new recording device. Well, I say that, it's the same program, but I've got a device that gets my speech, which it records it in a slightly different way. I think it's better. I'd like your opinion on it if you're interested in giving an opinion, if you remember the way my voice sounded in other videos. But yeah, it might be sounding a little bit different in this. Anyway, let's get on and talk about it. So first up, we've got this evolution overview, where I list them each by category. So there are three types of evolution material. Well, I'm going to assume that you have base knowledge about the game as I go through this, just because otherwise there's too much to say. And so yeah, you can group them by a certain number of things. So if they start off with, say, 100 common items of the first evolution, you know that it's going to be that much, and then that much for the last evolution. Anyway, so that I'm not really too bothered about. We're not really going to go through it. Legendary evolution, that's still there. That's what was in the old guide. And yes, efficiency tips. This is what we're going to go through. Oh, sorry, I'll stop bouncing around. So Duels are going to make the biggest difference. So the biggest difference. So they're one of the ways to make a difference between simply having mythic items and being further. I know some players who have been around in the game a long time. They've upped class promotion and the other thing about a wings a bit, and they've always been having mythic sets, but they still always struggle a little bit with the top content, platinum difficulty of tournaments and events and stuff. And one of the reasons which I'm able to do those in solo, and I always have been, is because I progress my Duels. They take a lot of time to both farm the stuff, get the Duels themselves. They can cost a lot of resources. They're a big time investment, but they're the thing to go for, in my mind, if you're going to sit around and you're going to play this game and enjoy it and try to, progress your character as best you can. So that's the kind of reason why you'd want to do it. However, I can see why some people may choose to avoid it. This guide is going to be comprised of four sections. The first one's going to talk about evolution materials. The next second section is going to talk about dual experience. That's about sort of farming it and what's efficient, and looking at the levels themselves, how much they require. Third section is going to be about dual leveling, and that's about how you choose to progress the Duels, because some gain more stats in the early levels, while others require you taking it to max to properly get the stats from it. And then I'm going to go to the conclusion. That's where I'm going to bring in a lot of things. There are two parts to that. Oh, I think my mouse has just died. Okay, we're going to do this with the touchpad. So, there are two parts to the conclusion. The first part is using all the information so far to talk about how to progress the different Duels, the stats. And then the second part is going to be bringing in everything which I've missed out, because there's a lot of simplification I've done so far, through the guide, and I just couldn't include it because it would be too much at once. So part two is going to come to the proper conclusions of everything, bringing all that in. So, evolution materials. This guide isn't going to look at square Duels because they're not really about character progression, they're just score, so I'm leaving that out completely, and generally I would not recommend doing them. Certainly not leveling up that far, because it's holding back your character progression, and you see a lot of difference between people who like to score lots and then their characters are kind of worse overall, and then the ones who don't like to score so much, who put the time into their progression. Sphere Duels, similarly, you don't have to worry about evolution materials with Sphere Duels because you get them as you do everything else. You just don't need that many, and they're really common. So the ones you're looking at are the Tristone and Crescent evolution materials. There are three ways you can get them, either by farming Executioner Camp. That's one of the early on maps, really quick to do. If you rush it with a wizard is best because you've got teleport, just runs literally straight to the boss. On normal or heroic, you can get the different evolution materials, and you can do it in about 30 seconds with loading time. It takes roughly 10 to 15 seconds running through the map if you do it that way. So you can get Stone Powder or Black Plumes at 24 per hour, Pepperstone or Turquoise Fragments at about 12 per hour. So overall, if you're farming, say on normal difficulty, you're going to be getting 24 Stone Powder and 12 Pepperstone in 1 hour, about 36 useful evolution materials if you try to just add it up in numbers. The second way is you can buy the common evolution materials, i.e. you can cut down on your farming on normal, you can just farm on heroic and buy the common ones. They cost 5 gems each when there's the 50% discount. The third choice is to do event runs, and you get 2 evolution materials per event run. That's 2 of a random type. There are 12 types. So when we move into this to analyze it a little bit, there's a 1/3 chance of you getting 2 evolution materials of a useful evolution material. That's i.e. 0.67 evolution materials per run. To compare this to the second option, the buying gems here, it works out that basically once you are, if you're running silver events with a discounted crown, it costs about 150,000 gold, and to get 0.67 event, you get 0.67 event mats, evo mats. I'm going to have to say evolution materials. Evo mats does not sound right said out loud. Evolution materials, and you get 5 gems on average. That's what you're doing it for. You're gem farming basically by doing the silver event. So considering 0.67 evolution materials equates to 3 gems if you're buying them for 5 gems. That's not a common. You're going to be getting the other one uncommon as well, but think of them as 3 gems. Then, considering that 150,000 gold to 5 gems is the most efficient way to farm gems, the fact that this is 3 gems extra at 60% more, that's kind of that should give you a bit of an idea of like basically how it's not quite efficient. It's hard to explain this exactly, but basically, it's not really an efficient way gems wise. If you're doing this to farm gems really quickly and actually you're then spending those gems on evolution materials, this is a kind of clear indicator that it's not good enough. To compare it to the first option of farming Executioner Camp, you have to look at your gold find to try and work it out. So I use the example of someone with 1,000 to 1,500 gold find. That's someone really in the late game, but it's where you may end up. And so if you spend 2 hours farming on that, you'll get about 6 million gold. You can then spend 1 hour farming event, the silver event, opening all the boxes and stuff. You're going to be spending about 6 million. So over the course of the 3 hours, you do 2 hours of farming and then 1 hour of event runs. That will give you 26.67 useful evolution materials, roughly. So that 26.67, compare that to 3 hours of farming Executioner Camp, you get 3 times 36, a little bit over 100. It's 4 times what you'd be getting if you were doing the silver event runs. So clearly, if you need evolution materials, the best way to do it is to farm Executioner Camp. No matter about it. Even if you had ridiculously high gold find, the best way to get evolution materials quickly would be to do Executioner Camp. However, I've realised now, since getting high gold find myself, that actually probably if you have over 100%, over 1,000% gold find or so, it's a good idea to start farming silver event with excess gold you have. Max a crown, buy event tokens, and just farm the silver event. You'll get loads of gems, and actually this will give you a bit of an inflow of evolution materials, all types, so it kind of satisfies your needs. Except it's not quite enough. It's not sorry, I stole my words there. It's not all the. You won't get all the evolution materials you need. However, you will get a bit of an inflow, and on top of any other ones you get from festivals and weekly achievements, you actually find that most of your needs are satisfied simply from farming the event in this way, and not having to buy any or farm any evolution materials. This is really, really great for people who have high gold find, and it's a massive benefit for helping them progress their jewels. So, moving on to jewel experience now. I did some interesting breakdowns here. So, First up, some duels require different amounts of different amounts of experience across them. However, there was a standard kind of set at a certain point, which is the standard which 30% gold fine crescents use and 180 damage duels. They became the kind of base good duels, and from there everything's either kind of doubled or tripled, or there's a little bit more. There's a couple of other odd ones, but that's basically it. So you can tell how much it is by looking at the starting experience of a fine level 1 duel. If it is 18,750, then you know it's going to be exactly like this. If it is 37,500, you know it's going to be like this, but everything doubled. So this breakdown here shows quite interestingly how it's actually broken up into 16ths. The total experience needed is exactly 15 million, and you have 1/16 and 2/16 being the first two qualities. That's almost nothing at all compared to the total experience. And also interestingly here it takes half the amount to get to epic level 10 than it does to go to the whole way. So that last quality requires half of the legendary, half of the experience. Then we do a breakdown of it completely, breaking down each individual level. Now what this shows, this table here is quite difficult to view, to read out the stuff, but actually if you look vertically, you notice that everything is exactly the same, but in relation to this table we created before. So the first one here we've got 1/16, and then the next one's 2/16. Actually every single experience requirement is doubled from the fine quality to superior quality. They all have the same relationship to this first level of their quality, which is some kind of multiplier. So you can break it down into simply a multiplier of the different levels. So level 1 takes 1 times, and then it takes the second level will take double the amount, third level will take 3.5 times the original amount, and it goes up like that. The interesting things here to note are there are 2 points where it suddenly jumps up in experience. The first one is between level 3 and level 4. It goes from double to 3.5 times, and then later on here at this level 7, level 8, there's a huge jump here from 6.5 times to 8 times. So those are kind of 2 suitable stopping points. We're mainly going to focus on this level 7 being an interesting one, because if you add up all these multipliers, you get that there are 50 chunks. That's what I've just simply called them here, 50 chunks, and each one of 18,750, that first level. And so there are 27 distributed in the last level. So levels 7 to 10 takes 27/50ths of the experience, and level 1 to level 7 takes 23/50ths, which is, I'm going to call it roughly half, to be honest. So it takes half the experience to get to level 7, and then half the experience to get from level 7 to level 10. That's really interesting. Now we've got those two things. It takes half the experience to get from fine level 1 to epic level 10, and then half the experience for legendary levels, and then per quality it takes half to get to level 7 and half to get to level 10. That's pretty much what that section goes through and points out. It doesn't really point out too much more other than the fact of no, that's not really that important. So anyway, now we'll go on to farming. So farming you can do in 3 ways that I listed. The first one is to farm a map for gold and pick up jewels as you do. If you farm in a group, it does cause an issue. There's a bug where only the person who loads into the map first actually gets any jewel drops. The other ones almost do not get any whatsoever. So you've pretty much got to do that in solo, and that is why I do most of my gold farming in solo, just to get those jewel drops. So yeah, that's the first option. You farm for gold and pick up jewels as you do so. The second option is farming Executioner Clamp as you would for evolution materials in normal or heroic difficulty. And if you kill the 2 enemies on the way to the boss, the 2 big enemies, they're kind of big, tough-looking guys with swords. They're directly on the route. So doing that, that gets lots of experiences we'll look into. And then also the third option is using autoplay and using the materials, having the materials option ticked, and you pick up all the jewels. That's obviously if you're not doing manual farming, if you're doing auto farming. So yeah, we're going to talk through those. the first one of these options may or may not be the biggest, depending on how much farming you do. Obviously, it's directly related to the amount of farming you do, and what it really matters about is which maps you farm. And obviously, I said solo as well, solo or in a group. If you won't get any jewels if you're in a group and you're the slowest one connecting. So the most popular maps are Animal's Sanctum when it's on Time to Do Gold. I mean the Gold Sanctum. Inner Circle and maybe Animal's Dungeon, but I don't particularly like that one. Anyway, so I have some times and jewels amount that you get there. So from Animal's Sanctum, you get this is exactly the same whether it's the Gold Sanctum or the normal Sanctum. You get about 2.75 jewels per run, and that takes about 40 seconds to do. So that's 2.75 per minute. On Inner Circle, you get about 2.5 jewels, and it takes 70 seconds to do, so that's 2 per minute. But it's worth noting that on Inner Circle, it's quite hard to pick up the jewels usually because you're killing the enemies and rushing past. Animal's Dungeon, you get about 3 jewels per run, and it takes 90 seconds to do. So that's 1.75 per minute. So quite clearly there, Inner Circle and Animal's Dungeon are fairly close when it comes to how many jewels you get per minute, and Animal's Sanctum stands out as one. Now, what I found generally from my farming and trying to do the fastest speed through the different maps, as well as killing as many enemies as possible. So the most efficient runs of them is I get about 10% more gold from Inner Circle. However, I'm clearly getting close to, well, I say close to, it's about 40% more jewels per minute from doing Animal's Sanctum. So I much prefer to farm Animal's Sanctum than Inner Circle. I know in a party people usually like to do Inner Circle, so I just kind of end up doing that. And to be honest, you're not getting any jewels when you're in a party if you aren't the fastest to connect. So yeah, do Inner Circle then. But in solo, I like to do Animal's Sanctum. What's also great about Animal's Sanctum is the jewels generally drop at the roundabout beginning, which is brilliant for picking up because as you go around it, you can see the jewels dropping and you can pick them up. You're not going to be rushing straight on from the enemies you just killed because you can still see them on the roundabout. Helps if you have a zoomed out view, and then also at the end as well. Right when you return to town, that's often where you get jewel drops again, and you're literally stopping at that point, so you can easily pick them up. Animal's Dungeon is the one I like to do for auto farming, which is why I've got that mentioned there. But yeah, that's the first option. The second option is doing Executioner Camp, and what I found out is that generally from doing this, you get about so it's killing the 2 broader swordsmen on the way. You get about 3.3 jewels per minute. So compare this to Animal's Sanctum, you get 2.75. You clearly get more. And what this works out as when you're trying to work out how much experience you're getting per hour, you get about 1.5 million experience per hour from Animal's Sanctum, and you get about 1.8 million experience per hour if you're doing the evolution material farming and picking up jewels as you go by killing those 2 guys. The reason why it's more there is because you're killing the boss, and you're killing bosses really frequently by doing that map quickly, and bosses drop lots of jewels. So yeah, that's actually a brilliant way to do it. Now, from auto farming, I like to do Animal's Dungeon because it takes the longest. Generally, when I'm auto farming, I'm doing other stuff, so I want to get lots of gold per run. I don't want to be fiddling around constantly restarting a map. So I do Animal's Dungeon, and it will get about 3 jewels per run. All in all, it works out as about 500,000 experience per hour. That's about a third what I would if I was manually farming, but it's quite cool to get that extra. I actually find it more useful to get jewels than I do gold from my auto farming, because the gold efficiency is pretty low, but that jewels it's no effort and it's pretty good. So in summary, what I would recommend is doing the Animal's Sanctum for solo. When you're doing a solo farming, just for that jewels. If you do want the more gold, then go for Inner Circle or something like that, but I would recommend solo farming Animal's Sanctum. And so you get 1.5 million there, 1.8 million from doing Executioner Camp when farming evolution materials, and 500,000 when auto farming in Animal's Dungeon. So now we go on to the jewel leveling. This is going to look at the stats of the jewels. And I'm just going to quickly read to see if there's anything important at the beginning. No. Okay, so it's going to be talking about how many stats you can get for the experience you put into it. Now, what it works out as is actually, it's actually interesting how the jewels, no matter what shape they are, no matter how high the max stats are, they actually have done very carefully a distribution for each stat. So if you look at gold find, this is a gold find on any jewel whatsoever. You actually find the same percentages of the total stat at the different levels. So this is really interesting, and it's why I then detailed it by stat. So gold find here, we're not going to look at these too much, but you can see here at epic level 10 you've got 80% gold find, and obviously everything's 100% at the end. You can actually group damage and health together. They're almost identical until legendary, when damage is a bit more. You get a bit more of the damage there. And anyway, so then we go and we look at the experience needed to get to these different points. This has already been listed above, but not quite as the percentages. So I want to point out that, do you remember earlier when I was looking at the experience, we found that it took 50% half the amount on each quality to get to level 7, and half the amount again to get to level 10. So appropriate stopping points, appropriate points to look at is level 7 and level 10 on each of these. That's why I listed only level 1, 7 and 10 on each of these jewels above, and each of these stats above. And then for the experience requirement, it's actually easiest just to look at level 7 and level 10 of each quality. So then, furthermore, you can see here, these first three, the experience requirements are so low that really you can just ignore them and you can just jump straight to superior level 10. So the suitable stopping points are superior level 10, epic level 7, epic level 10, legendary level 7, and legendary level 10. So those are the only 5 bits you need to look at for most of the jewels to get the best amounts of efficiency out of them. So then we can look at those 5 here. I've put it into a table. You can see every row is each of these 5 stopping points. The first column is very important. It's got the experience required. That's taken straight from this table. So that's the experience required to get up to each of these points percentage-wise. Then we have each of the stats listed above. Those tables are all brought into here. So you just need this table here. You don't need to look up any of that stuff above, just this one here. And you want to compare everything to this first column. Now, what's really interesting is that they pretty much are split into non-combat stats and combat stats. So if you look at the non-combat stats here, stuff like gold find, armor I count as non-combat, max mana and kind of lifesteal, you see here the stats are 53%, 46.5%, 50%, 40%, very high compared to then the combat stats, damage and health at 20% and elements 35%. That goes all the way through that the non-combat stats, they benefit greatly in the earlier levels, and the combat stats require those higher levels to get to. Now I made some important notes here which I'm just going to read out. So that was the first point there. At superior level 10 you can see that these non-combat stats have a lot more than the combat stats. So what you can take from that is that the combat stats will require maxing really to get any proper stats out of them. The gold find has the highest percentage at every single level. It indicates that basically they're the best ones to not max in order to get the best efficiency out of them. If you take, for example, the final 3 levels, these final 3 levels takes 27% of the total experience, and yet you only get 6% of the total gold find. That is just so poor efficiency that really it's not worth doing on any gold find jewel at all, really. So third point to make is that legendary level 7 is actually quite interesting if you look across the stats. Almost everything is above is above that 73% by quite a lot. So actually almost all jewels, there's almost no point getting them beyond legendary level 7. Those last 3 levels on every jewel are really inefficient. They're only health really is at 0.4, but anyway, pretty much everything is really inefficient on those last 3 levels. The fourth point is that actually one thing missed from this is the elements. These numbers aren't particularly reliable because actually what happens with elemental stats is that they jump up massively when you evolve them. You can see this if you look here in this table. This is kind of why I've included level 1 on these. If you look at the superior to epic, that's a jump of 7.5%, and then the huge jump from epic to legendary of 19%. And so really this isn't showing it properly in this table, and in fact the sigil stopping points aren't these 5 stopping points for elemental jewels. Instead, it is superior level 10, epic level 5 to 7, somewhere in that range, legendary level 3 or legendary level 10. Those are the good stopping points. So now I look at each of the 3 most important levels for efficiency. These first 3, superior level 10, epic level 7, and epic level 10. Those are the ones which you get many more stats for the amount of experience put into them, and they're kind of one you want to look at most. So I break those down, and I split things into non-combat stats and combat stats. And really, I'm just going to read out these summaries here at the end of each section. So I think of superior level 10, it's 20% of the requirements and 50% of the non-combat stats, 20% of the combat stats. When I say requirements there, that's both experience and evolution materials. You only need the common evolution materials to get up to superior level 10 because there's just that first evolution, and it's only about 20%, 25%, something like that, of the total. 25% of the total common evolution materials to get up that first evolution. Almost nothing, and you get 50% of the non-combat stats. Epic level 7, it takes 33% of the experience, 50% of the evolution materials, and you get 75% of the gold find and 40 to 50% of the combat stats. So of the combat stats, it's again almost exactly in line with the experience and evolution materials you need, but for the gold find, that is way more than certainly the experience you need, and also it's more than the evolution materials. When you look at the epic level 10 now, it takes roughly 50% of both the evolution materials and the experience, and you get 80% of the gold find and 50% of the combat stats. So still, combat stats are perfectly in line with it, but a gold find here, you get 80% for only 50% of the requirements. This is something I pointed out earlier as well, but yeah, this point here, 80% of it, that's pretty much all of it, and considering that's 50% of the evolution materials, which are hard to get, as well as less experience, that is a very, very suitable stopping point for gold find jewels, much more efficient than maxing gold find jewels, and to be honest, it's better to stop at that point and then put your experience and stuff into the combat jewels, which will progress your character in other ways, rather than simply going for farming. So my summary goes through that. I don't really need to mention anything out of it. I just say here combat stats, damage, health, and elements. That's what I count as combat. Non-combat I count as gold find, armor, max mana, and lifesteal. So now we'll move on to so just quickly reading that. Sorry. If you want, you can quickly read this section here. Pause the video and read that. So now we go on to the conclusion. The conclusion is where it gets kind of complicated, and I'm going to quickly mention first the things not included are score jewels and tournament jewels. I give the reasons here, but yeah, they're just not included. And then I have some important things that I kind of have missed so far. Those are going to be brought in part 2 of the conclusion. I'm not really going to cover them in part 1, apart from I might introduce them later at the end. So those are the reasons there. So I'll get into those when I come to them. This is conclusion part 1.